There are different reverb topologies in Reverberate 3, and elements of the user interface will change. They'll seem to come and go depending on which one you're looking at. That can be confusing at first, so we'll have a quick look at that. Here I've got preset 1 from the factory presets. This is a long plate, and if we look up here, we can see that in this section, this is what's known as a parallel stereo impulse response. That's the one that you've probably seen before if you've used convolution reverb before. It's a 2-channel impulse response. And if I were to change onto the next one over, we'll see things have changed slightly. Here we're using what's called a true stereo impulse response. We'll come back to what that means in a minute, but if you notice, these tabs along the top have changed. We no longer have SIM-TS, which actually stands for simulated true stereo. If we go to a true stereo, we no longer need that because it is true stereo, but we've got this instead. This split mod moves over to here. If I come up here and I go to Fusion IR, let's just pull up one of these, we'll see things change again, and we've got a Fusion IR tab instead. All of these changes are to do with modulation. Modulation is really important in Reverberate 3, and it's one of the things that really sets it apart from other convolution reverbs. So we should maybe have a look at that. Here's what happens in a parallel stereo. You probably just think of this as being a stereo impulse response, but in Reverberate 3, it's referred to as parallel stereo because there are other kinds of stereo. In this example, we're talking about capturing an impulse response of a hardware reverb. So we've got 2 input channels, left and right, which go into the stereo reverb unit, and we take 2 channels out from the capture, left and right. So far, so normal. There's another way of doing it, which Liquid Sonics refer to as true stereo. In this case, we go around twice. We take a left input and we capture the left and the right outputs from the reverb unit, and then we go again, taking the right input and capturing the left and the right outputs. That way we get a 4-channel impulse response. The reason you do that is it gives a greater sense of envelopment. Usually with the opposite output, say the right output from a left input, you get a certain amount of crossfeed that's done internally within the units. Very often it's delayed and filtered, and yeah, it gives an added sense of depth and envelopment to the reverb. It's worth doing. True stereo, that's what that is. So what about Fusion IR? With a standard impulse response, that's using a single capture. They're great for capturing the detail of the space or the unit or whatever it is that you're capturing. They're really extremely good at that. But what they'll never capture, because it's only capturing one instance in time, is any change that happens over time. To get around that shortcoming, what Liquid Sonics did was they invented a thing called Fusion IR. And that's very much like if a standard impulse response is a photograph, Fusion IR is kind of like a movie. It's taking lots and lots and lots of impulse responses over time and then interpolating between them. And if you do that, you end up with something like this. You capture that change over time that you're missing using a static standard impulse response. So that's Fusion IR. You can use your own impulse responses in Reverberate 3, but it ships with a load of content ready to go. If you head over to the Liquid Sonics website, you'll find that there's additional Fusion IR packs that you can download. You can probably infer what they are: 48, 24, M7 is clearly Bricasti, and FS1 is a general collection of time-varying reverb impulse responses. So before you get to know Reverberate 3 in detail, there's so much content up there ready to go as presets, captured from classic hardware units. So do make time to take a look around the library of presets that ship with Reverberate 3. As well as Fusion IR content, there's a wealth of conventional impulse responses for you to get your teeth into.